Hey, good evening. Dr. Dara here, Truth with Dr. Dara, and we are live from my dining room. And tonight we're going to talk about toxic relationships. I mean, is there anybody in the world that has never experienced a toxic relationship? I think it would be impossible to go through life unscarred from some kind of relationship. So we're on Facebook and Instagram. You can go ahead and put any questions or thoughts in the comments, and I will do my best to get to it. And if I haven't answered it, then scream at me and let me know again that it's there. So as we're thinking about it, toxic relationships, I don't know, what are your thoughts? How do you guys define what toxic relationships are? I had a pretty big epiphany this week. As most of you know, last week I bailed. I bailed on doing my live. I was exhausted. I came home Thursday night and I had a lot of good things going on, really good things, and my week was so jammed packed, and I was going from thing to thing to thing, and I was thinking about doing the live, and I just decided I don't have it in me. I didn't feel that it would be like my authentic, genuine self to just kind of put on a fake smile and be like, hey, here I am. When the truth of the matter is I was just feeling like, and I just wanted to crawl in bed and pull the covers over my head. And that is what I did. And so the epiphany is that there's this idea around toxic relationships and it being about other people. And for today, it is totally about yourself and what you're putting into the relationships, because if your love cup isn't full and you're on par, you could pretty much expect that your relationships are gonna go to crap just the same. So is your love cup full, and what toxic relationships are you finding in your life? I see a bunch of you are jumping on, Allison, Amy, Alex, and Jennifer. So again, if you have any questions, comments, put them down here. We're talking about toxic relationships and how do you define them? So I just said, like, you guys got it. I think the key is yourself, because other times in my life when relationships were going sour and they were feeling toxic, it was 100% me. It was my interpretation, it was my perception, it was the way that I was seeing the world and the relationships, thinking that, oh, it'll change or it'll be different. Something I can just if I just pretend like it'll be okay, then it'll be okay. Well, you know what? It's not gonna be okay. Don't think that a relationship is gonna change, because it's an as-is sale. As you meet somebody is as is, you can expect that they're gonna be. And oftentimes we'll think, oh, well, maybe they'll lose 5 pounds, or maybe that person will change. A leopard, is it a leopard or a zebra? A leopard or a zebra does not change their stripes. Their spots don't change, their stripes don't change. Wait a second, I'm not saying that people can't change and relationships can't move in a forward direction. I'm just saying that when you start the relationship, just be really sure that you can take it exactly how it is. And then if the relationship progresses in a positive way, then that is just gonna be a bonus. Awilda, I see that you're on, which is way cool, because that means Awilda's on from Venezuela. So hi, nice to see you. So toxic relationships, it's you, it's not them. Yes, I get what might be going on for someone else, but at the end of the day, it's your interpretation of the relationship. It's how you're taking it in. And so you might say, well, how do I stop it? How does that not happen? Well, for some of you who have hung out with me or know me, I do rapid resolution therapy. I don't do traditional therapy. In rapid resolution therapy, the idea is, well, would you be okay if you weren't irritated by that person anymore? Would you be okay if whatever they said or did didn't matter? But a lot of times what happens is we don't necessarily want that. We want to maybe be agitated because we don't want them to think that they won, or we don't want them to think that we're okay with what they're doing. Almost like, if I'm not upset with you, or if I don't get frustrated, that means that you win, or I won't be, you get away with it. And that's not what's going on. I'm talking about, so when you're feeling, challenged with somebody, that it just is what it is. I mean, we're the only life form that has these reactions. Bears don't get mad at each other. They're not like, oh my gosh, you are not paying attention to me. They're just go and do their hibernation and go to sleep however they're gonna go to sleep. They just do their barely thing. And we're the only life form that's thinking to ourselves, oh my gosh, something has to be different or better, or they're not giving me what I want. And a lot of times it falls short and it becomes toxic because of expectations, thinking that it should be different than what it is, or thinking that you can do it different or they can do it different. So that's the big part in toxic relationships. And I think often people talk about toxic relationships and they just think it has to be somebody that they're dating. And that's, at least when you're dating somebody, or you're, I guess, even married, you can break up with them, you can stop. But what happens when that toxic relationship is in your family? What if it's your brother, your sister, your mom, your dad, your uncle, your cousins? You know, and when do you know if a toxic relationship is problematic? Well, my rule of thumb with that is, if you're not being your best self and it's messing you up, then it's a problem, and you still feel like squashed and you feel like you're not doing the things that you want to do. If you're not, I don't know, I hear this all the time. Well, I just don't hang out with my friends anymore because it causes too many problems and too much complications with my partner. Like, that's not cool. Or you feel like you're tiptoeing around family members, and when you're around them, you don't get to be yourself. You feel like you have to be quiet, or you have to be careful not to hurt their feelings. Hello, toxic relationship. But like, does that mean you have to not talk to the person? No, again, it just means, would you be cool with if you had a response from them, but it didn't really bother you? Like, they did what they did, but it just didn't like permeate into your bubble. Would that be cool for you? Because that's what's going on. And a lot of relationships that you're having anyway, it's not even about that relationship right then. You know how you hear about mommy issues and daddy issues and family issues? A lot of times it is just coming up because that's what's ingrained in your mind, and it's the way that your brain's been thinking about it. So automatically your partner acts a certain way, and you're thinking, oh, well, you know, they're gonna get better, it's gonna get better because that's what happened when you were younger. Hey Lou, I see you're just getting on, and a couple others. We're talking about toxic relationships. So I need to know if somebody can't relate to a toxic relationship. Jacqueline, I see that you just jumped on. I mean, it would be impossible. Even in work, there's toxic relationships that go on, and you can't just quit them. So I'm thinking like the keys here is, number one, you can't just quit all toxic relationships. And number two, it's you. You're the foundation of that relationship, and if you're not doing what you need to do, don't expect that they're gonna do it. So like, when I talk about a love cup, I'm talking about you being full with your food, your exercise, your sleep, like taking care of your fundamentals. Because if you're not doing you, you're gonna be grouchy. And if you're not doing you, then you're gonna compromise what's okay with the person that you're hanging out with in your family and whoever your intimate partner is. You're gonna be like, well, you know, I'm not following what I need to be doing. And if that's the case for them, then you're gonna be like, well, it's okay if they treat me like that, because, well, my gosh, you're treating yourself like that. So that's not cool. So if you're not gonna take care of you and set the tone for how you want it done, don't expect that anybody else is gonna do it. It's not gonna work like that. And you know, as moms, we think, oh, well, I can't put the oxygen mask on myself. It's selfish. Well, actually, if you do not put the oxygen mask on yourself before other people, then other people they're gonna die. They're gonna die. You cannot save anybody else if you don't save yourself first. So when you're looking at it, you're thinking, oh my God, this relationship is such a mess. Yeah, for sure, it's them, but it is you. You are playing like a huge part in that. Why is it so okay for whatever they're doing? Why, whatever's going on with them, has that become a thing that you're willing to like just roll over and say okay to? Allison says, what if you're trying to do you, trying to ignore what's being done to you and around you, but the other person, people make that virtually impossible? Okay, are you ready for the answer? Then get out. I mean, like, N-O. N-O. My kids spell N-O all the time. No, and I know you could say, but I live with them and I don't have any place else to go. Well, focus on what that plan is away. See it as you want to see it. And I do get it. Sometimes people can't just like snap your fingers, get out of a relationship. And even if you're dating somebody or married to someone and you notice that things are not going well, it's sometimes not as simple of being like, well, I'm just gonna leave because you will be homeless. So it's not always just like that, but see yourself, design how you want it to look. What is it that you want, and how would you interact with somebody in a relationship differently? Because it might be sometimes, again, and I'm not saying that what they're doing is cool, but it might be the way that you're responding to them. Like, what are you giving to the relationship? How are you fueling it? And Allison, would it be fine for you, like, if they did do those things and you were just like, whatever, you know, if you're just like a bobblehead or like Charlie Brown, wah, 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 wah. So whenever they're doing what they're doing, it doesn't have an effect on you because you are just doing it. I mean, like, I don't know, let's think of some drastic situations. If you're living with somebody and they're using drugs and that doesn't work for you, well, yeah, I mean, you gotta get out. You gotta get out. You can't stay in it. You've gotta be thinking, well, how can I get out? Because if you continue to say, all right, I'm cool with that, then you're just like saying, yeah, just keep going. You're not saying no. And it does start in the beginning of a relationship too. I wrote this in my book about this time when I was in college, and somebody said to me, you know, however you're treating him now is how you're gonna interact with him for the rest of your life. I was cooking dinner and being like all, you know, Martha Stewart-ish, and I thought that I was being so sweet, but the reality was me completely doting and not taking care of myself first and putting him as a priority is completely what happened continuously in the relationship. So I set the groundwork, and maybe you might say, well, what if you're in the relationship and you recognize that you've done this groundwork, so what do I do then? Well, you just start doing it differently. You change the rules. You change the rules all the time. I mean, that's the hard part in a relationship, because they might be just doing their thing and they don't realize that it's a problem, and all of a sudden you're like, I think of my dogs when you want to pull them and they don't want to go anywhere and they're just like, no, stop. But when that's happening, you're gonna just tell them, and you've gotta be consistent. You have to be consistent. So Allie, I get that you might be telling them no thank you, but are you? And are you being consistent with that message too, as if to what's okay for you and what's not okay for you? And if you want it done differently, you've gotta do it differently for yourself and really check in. Is your message clear? And if not, what does it look like to be out of that relationship? Would you be fine if you weren't in it? And again, I get it. Sometimes people are married for 25 years and finally they wake up and they say, oh my gosh, I am suffocating. I am literally dying inside, and this relationship is toxic. Well, it didn't happen overnight. It totally didn't, because I can't think of anybody that would say to me, oh, it got toxic overnight. I mean, toxic overnight would be like they cheated on me. So yeah, they cheated on me and it got toxic. Well, you have two choices. You either stay in the relationship or you don't. And if you're not gonna stay in the relationship, then move on. And if you are gonna stay in the relationship, then you have to be in a place that you're gonna just like, it doesn't matter what they do. It doesn't matter if you can't keep bringing up the affair every single day, because then you're just re-stimulating the trauma over and over and over again. And again, the whole idea with toxic relationships is history repeats itself. I can guarantee you that if you're in one relationship and you know, it's not like it's this new circumstance. You're probably doing it in other relationships in your life too. Allie says, bingo, I need consistency. Yeah, well, people-pleasing tendencies, well, of course, but who doesn't try to people-please? And we're not looking for confrontation. If you were looking for confrontation, then you would have gotten the hell out of there a long time ago. A lot of people would have ended relationships if it wasn't for feeling compelled or feeling guilty or feeling like they're people-pleasing. They would have gotten out a long time ago. But you know, it is part of our society, like, oh, but if I leave, I'm bad, or I can't do it any different than I'm doing it, or I mean, listen, it's ingrained in our culture and our society that you take care of your family, you take care of your parents, and it can be really tricky sometimes because they may not be doing it the way that you want to do it. So what would it be like if you weren't in that relationship anymore and you completely got out? Can you see yourself out of it? Imagine yourself out of that toxic situation, like ahead of it. What would it be like in 2 months from now if you weren't in that relationship? So Allie, for you, what would it be like if you set down those like your nose and you were consistent with it? What would it be like in about 5 months from now, 1 month from now, in a week from now? How would you feel? How would you be talking? What kind of energy would you have? And so then the more that you're drawing that into it, the more that you're pushing yourself through that, then you're seeing it. So it can't not happen. But if you're just talking about it and just staying in it, I was in a session today and the woman's been in a marriage for God knows how many years, and she has an ill mother and she has a sick husband, and she feels so completely stuck. She does. She feels so completely stuck. She doesn't know what to do. But all that's happening is whenever she's doing things, she's just thinking about how she's stuck. Every other sentence is how she's stuck and how it's been for her. Remember, when information and stuff is happening for us, it's not happening to us. It's happening in our minds. It's the way that our mind reads the information, the data, and it's going on. So it repeats. It's like a stuck tape recorder. I don't know, remember the old school records? Like it would just skip over and over and over again. And that's what's going on in these relationships that feel toxic, is that you can't get out and you keep re-stimulating because your mind is reading the old information as being current. So if you're in a relationship and you're dating somebody and you're feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm in this toxic relationship. Well, yeah, you were in other toxic relationships. And what are you contributing to it? I see a bunch more of you just jumped on. We're talking about toxic relationships. So how do you define them? Where do they show up for you? And what's your part in it? Because honestly, that's the biggest thing that I had this epiphany over the past couple weeks. And last week when I didn't want to come on and do my live and I just felt fatigued, I realized, wait a second, I'm gonna have a toxic relationship with myself, because if I don't take care of me, then it's gonna pile over in other ways. Because let's just say I got on and I did it anyway, and then I felt fatigued, and then the next day I'm feeling tired, and then my kids say something or my husband says something, it starts to carry over, and then I have this poor attitude. And then I can't understand why nobody wants to be around me or nobody wants to talk to me. And it just shows up, but it constantly is showing up. So if it's constantly showing up for you, well, where's the common denominator? Hello, you. So do you have to stay in it? No. And do you have to change it immediately? No. Lou says, Doc, I think every relationship is a big learning experience, but I think people get into relationships for instant gratification instead of building a relationship, beginning with friendship, and taking the time to learn about the person's habits, likes and dislikes. Well, of course, Lou. We all do that. We just want immediate gratification without a doubt. But that's kind of the fun in a relationship too. And remember, toxic relationships can be happening whether it's in a relationship that's intimate, but also in family relationships, friend relationships. I mean, I remember I had a friend for many, many years, and it took time to cultivate, but then it was definitely toxic because she just loved the drama. If I had boy drama, she was on the phone every second, and we totally commiserated, and that's all we talked about. And eventually the relationship severed, and at first I was really heartbroken because it was a long-term relationship. But then I realized there was almost like a peace, like a space, because then there wasn't always the drama. And Lou, that leads me to a part of it too. It's also not just about instant gratification, but it's about attention. I remember when I dated this guy one time, it's not like it was conscious or anything, but we had a lot of fun together, and we didn't live in the same place. And whenever he would be gone, I was not so cool with myself. I felt so antsy. And then when he would call me and he would go out and do things, we would get into fights. And I swear, it's not like I was like, oh, hey, let's get into a fight so you'll pay attention to me. But I'm pretty sure what happened is I learned that if we had a discrepancy and we got into it, then he paid attention to me. And so that's like a different kind of immediate gratification, but I got attention. And I think that's what happens in relationships a lot of times. So would you be okay if it wasn't toxic anymore? Would you be okay if you weren't arguing the person? If you're not arguing, does that mean you wouldn't even have anything to talk about? Or if you weren't telling them that they were doing something wrong, would it be okay for you? But I definitely think for sure, Lou, it is building relationships and getting to know people. And I got asked an article inquiry this week about, do you think people should date once a week in a relationship? How would that affect a relationship? And it had some pros because I think it creates some boundaries and some limits, and you pay attention to yourself. And I also think it's absence makes the heart grow fonder instead of just jumping right into it. But then on the other part of it, there is a natural flow, and I also think, Lou, that it's about where you're at, because if you're completely like not content and happy with yourself, then you're gonna dive into a relationship because, you know, you've seen Jerry Maguire, you complete me, and that's the idea that we get. So if you're kind of like not feeling like you're doing so great in your own life or taking care of yourself, then you meet somebody and you're thinking, oh my gosh, I'm gonna be okay. I'm gonna be whole. It's gonna be fine. And it doesn't work like that. So you think that you're filling your love cup, getting instant gratification, but then in the end, I don't know, I picture like the love cup being like a siphon and you taking care of you is like the block at the bottom. But if it's not stuffed in the bottom, all that crap just keeps pulling through, pushing through, going through, out the bottom of it. And so it can't hold anything tight. But the only way that you're gonna hold a love cup kind of tight is doing you and keeping it solid. So I love some of the comments, and if you guys have any continued comments, get them in, because we're gonna wrap up here. We're gonna close up shop about relationships. So as of now, once we end this show tonight, you don't have any more toxic relationships, at least not with yourself. I even posted this week in my group, Truth with Dr. Dara, like how would you do it? Like, what would you change different, or what can you do for your relationship with yourself? And if you're cool with you, you're gonna hang out with people that are cool. If you're cool with you, then you're gonna be consistent with other people. And if you're knowing what you want, that's gonna be like 100% too. I think too often, like the part of instant gratification is like, oh, you'll do it for me. I'll put all my eggs into your basket and then I will be okay. Okay, note to self, you won't be okay. So if you're seeing a bunch of toxic relationships in your life, you are the common denominator. I'm not real great with fractions, but I'm pretty sure that is the equivalency of this mathematical equation. All right, so come hang out with me again next week. Send me questions. Next week, we're gonna talk about grief. You got it, kind of sad, not so sad, but let's talk about grief, because grief shows up in relationships. Lou says, I have an Australian Shepherd and he gives me all the unconditional love I need. Exactly, Lou. I think that's why I have 3 dogs. I have lots of unconditional love, 2 kids, a husband. But like, that dog is gonna get it every time. Dogs don't feel guilty. Dogs don't think about toxic things. Every time you come home, they just get excited, wag their tails, and they're your best friend. I think they've got a pretty smart thing going in their heads. So thank you again to all of you for tuning in. Be sure to get on my mailing list for my newsletter at drdara.com, and you can also get into the group that I was talking about. Anything else? Am I forgetting it? My Facebook page, Instagram. I've got some videos on YouTube, but send me some messages. Let me know some topics that you'd like to see in May. I can't even believe we're discussing May, but here we are. It's coming, whether we like it or not. So you guys take care, and I will see you soon. Peace out.